Okay. So I'm going to write at the top of this. Actually, maybe I'm going to kind of go back and forth. If you've got a graphing paper notebook, you should be able to just write right in there and be able to see, but it's a little harder with this part. So I would suggest, Autumn, that you and I paste in our graphs when we're ready. Okay. So this is 2.1. Today we're talking about histograms. Today is day 2, and this is 10.5. Using his beautiful new notebook. Okay, so I said that a histogram is a fancy word for a bar chart. I might just do mine directly on here. I want all of your homework for this to be on graph paper so that it's nice and even, easy to read. Okay, so we're looking at yesterday's data. And this right here, this data from our frequency distribution will give you all the information you need for all the graphs we make. But for different graphs, we're choosing different things. So this one's called a frequency histogram. A frequency histogram on the x-axis is your classes. And on the y-axis, you have frequency. Okay. Actually, it's something called, I'm going to write it right here. These are actually called class boundaries because in a histogram, the bars are going to be right next to each other. I'm also going to do something like this, which shows that I can start wherever I want. This is called a broken axis right here. It kind of looks like you go up and then down and then swirl it back. It's like almost like a music note or something. Huh? You're right, it does. And then we have 4 classes, right? So I'm going to make 5 marks. Can you see how my bars, like one bar will be here, one bar will be there, one here, and one here. So even though it's 5 marks, it's going to be 4 bars. Okay. And then our frequencies on the side, if I'm looking at our data for this, do you see how 3 is the highest frequency we have? So then on the side, you're just going to go up to 3. I don't need a broken axis for this one because I'm starting at 0. 3, 2, 1. You always label your graphs. This side says frequency. And down here, underneath classes, I'm going to write times we've been to the ER. Okay. Now, here's why you can't just write underneath this column like 1 to 5 because in AP Stats, they want these numbers right on the dash, right on the dot here. So the question is, what goes there? Because the first class is 1 to 5, and then the second class is 6 to 10. So what do I write on the in-between? Do I write 5 or do I write 6? Or do I do something else? Anybody have a guess? So a class boundary goes halfway between. So you go halfway between 5 and 6. So this would actually be 5.5. Notice this is my second dash that I'm writing that down on. What would the next one be? 10.5, which is halfway between these. And the next one will be 15.5, which is halfway between those. So 10.5, 15.5. Do you remember that on our example, our class width was 5? Which makes sense because these are also jumping by 5s. So look at the pattern here. 5.5, 10.5, 15.5. What do you think that one is? 20.5. And the first one? Yep, 0.5. And sometimes, by the way, you'll actually get a negative, so it'll be like negative 0.5, which will be, it's still allowed. So that's what class boundaries are. Class boundaries are that 0.5 between classes. And the reason why they do that is because if somebody fell into the 1 through 5 category, do you see how it would have to be in here? And 6 through 10 would have to be in there. All right, and then you just make bars for each one. So this is 3, 2, 1, 1. So let's see, 3. And 2, 1, and 1. That's as hard as it is. The hard thing about stats is not really the math that goes with it. It's more like, even in AP stats, it's all about, like, any individual formula I give you, you can do. The hard part is knowing when to do what. And in this chapter, we're learning how to make 12 different kinds of graphs, so it's hard to remember which one's which. So you really want your notes to be clear. Everybody ready? Can I move on? Okay. All right, second one is called a relative frequency histogram. And this is very similar, where the x-axis is the classes, well, more like the class boundaries, with that plus or minus 0.5. And the y-axis is relative frequency this time.
Can we borrow like one of your like small like whiteboards with a marker?
Yeah.
Okay. Markers and erasers are over there, and the whiteboards are on the shelf. How come?
Oh, we're making a video in Czech's class, and we want to make sure that people know what.
Like we know
Nice.
what we're asking. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys should sign up for Math League.
Yeah. I think I want to.
It's outside my door. 2 of them are home meets this year.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, two are like virtual, like we'll do online, and then 3 are away. And remember, you only have to come to 3 total to, so
Okay.
you should do it. Okay, this one's X, this one's Y. We're gonna do the exact same thing we did before. I'm still going to label it times we've been to the R. And then on the side, this time is relative frequency. Okay. Now, while this graph will look very similar to this one, you can't just put these numbers on the side. You can't just put 0.43, 0.29, 0.14 because it has to be even the way it jumps. So it looks to me like we need 5 tallies from 0.1 to 0.5.